Hello, everyone. We'll just take a couple minutes to wait for people to trickle on in. Mhm. 6:01, should we get started? Great. All righty. Hello, everyone. I'm Mandy. I'm the Coastal Conservation Manager for Oregon Shores. And for tonight's program, Oregon Efforts for Western Snowy Plovers. Welcome. As we go along, feel free to drop questions into the chat and we'll hopefully get to them in our Q&A. This event is a collaboration between Oregon Shores, the Center for Biological Diversity, the Surfrider Foundation, and Oregon Parks and Recreation Department. We came together because all of our organizations are working to protect the plover in different ways. Maybe you're already a plover lover, or maybe you're wondering why so many of us care so much about a tiny sand-colored bird. In case you're in that second group, here are 3 quick fun facts about snowy plovers. So these birds are beach specialists. They nest on the upper dry part of the beach, kind of near the dunes. And they don't actually build nests like other birds. Instead, they shimmy their little bodies to make a divot in the sand called a scrape. And they'll lay their eggs there. And when chicks first hatch, they're about the size of a human thumb, and they leave the scrape within a few hours of hatching. And they can't fly for weeks, so they rely on camouflage, speed, and a safe beach in order to survive. In Oregon, their population dropped to about 50 individuals in the early 1990s, but thanks to decades of targeted recovery efforts, their number has grown to around 500 today in Oregon, but they're still a small and vulnerable population. So tonight you'll hear from each of our organizations about how our work connects to the Western Snowy Plover and how you can help. So let's dive in. I'll pass it to Malia.
Thanks so much, Mandy, and thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Malia Becker, and I use she, her pronouns. I work for the Center for Biological Diversity as an organizer, talking about these species and the wildlife, or the wild habitats that they need to thrive all over the country. So I am actually based in Minnesota, but I grew up in Corvallis and have a lot of love for the Oregon coast. And really excited to be partnering with so many great organizations to talk about the Western Snowy Plover today. So the Center for Biological Diversity, we are a large national nonprofit organization, primarily working through the Endangered Species Act to protect wildlife and get critical habitat designations. There are a lot of different programs. Like I said, I mostly do outreach and education, as well as some kind of creative media projects. So I'm going to be kicking us off with a little bit of groundwork and kind of contextualizing where we're at and why we're talking about this species in particular right now. Next slide. So for some background, we are currently in the planet's 6th mass extinction. So animals and plants are disappearing at the fastest rate since the dinosaurs. And we know that this time the cause isn't geologic, it's not cosmic, but it is human caused. So a 2019 UN report found that there are more than 1 million species that are at risk of extinction in the coming decades if these trends continue. And some of the root causes of that are, very familiar to all of us. It's climate change, it's burning of fossil fuels, but human impact on wildlife can also be thought of as this combination of how many of us there are and how many resources we consume or how many resources we damage. If you think about, for instance, polluting a waterway. So over the past 50 years, human population has more than doubled, while wildlife populations have plummeted by an average around 70%. And that brings me to the western snowy plover. So Mandy gave a bit of a background there. But some of the specific threats to the plover are human development in coastal areas, as well as increased human activity, so beach going activity. And then on the climate side of things, sea level rise is encroaching on their beach habitat. And from the other side, invasive species like beach grass have all impacted the plover and their nesting sites. Next slide. So diving deeper into these root causes or these upstream causes, the global population is now over 8 billion, but I want to stress that numbers aren't the only thing that matters when it comes to population pressure. So even though the US has a low fertility rate, and that's been quite in the news recently, every child born here has an outsized impact on the planet just based on our high consumption economy, and how much each person consumes. So the US is 5% of the world's population, but we use 30% of all resources, create 30% of all waste, and emit 15% of the world's carbon emissions. These are probably pretty familiar to folks. The average American has an environmental footprint that's 60% larger than most Europeans, and nearly 700% larger than the average person in most African countries. And I want to stress here that there are many people who want to live a more sustainable lifestyle, but are not able to because of systemic issues. So, if you're hearing these stats and you're like, oh man, that kind of makes me feel bad for the choices I make, or feel like I have to make individual behavior change, I want to kind of like put a pin in that and say, I think a lot of this is bounded by systemic issues. So for example, if you want to be able to bus around your city, but you don't have access to public transit, there are a lot of things that could improve sustainability, but they're not invested in, they're not easy to access here in the US. And to kind of further address these systemic issues, and talk about population pressure, not everyone has the ability to choose if and when to have kids. And that's certainly true here in the US. So 19 million women in the US don't have access to the full range of contraceptives, and about half of all US high school students receive sex ed that meets federal standards, minimum federal standards. So we have quite a bit of improvement to make. And I'm going to introduce kind of two of the Center for Biological Diversity's media and education projects that are aimed at getting people to start talking about these issues and advocating for solutions. Next slide. So the first of those is our Endangered Species Condoms project. This is a project that distributes condoms for free. So anyone can request a box of condoms. They come in these cute packages with an endangered species on the front and one of these puns. So be a savvy lover, protect the snowy plover. And then on the inside of the box, there's a bunch of information about how this particular species is impacted by human activity and human population pressure. The project is turning 15 this year, so we have distributed over 1.5 million condoms in all 50 states, and have had quite a few partnerships with, science museums or zoos or aquariums, places that are holding 21 plus events and want the opportunity to hand these out. And the idea with the endangered species condoms is really to kind of break the taboo and get people in the door to start talking about the relationship between human health and wildlife health, that you can't have one without the other, and that these are inextricably tied together. And just anecdotally, I've had quite a few health clinics or people who are teaching sex ed reach out for the condoms because they help it. It starts the conversation off with a little bit of lightheartedness, and people laugh. And especially if you're talking about something that's, often hard or often taboo, like sex education or reproductive rights, it's great to start people off with like a little bit of a laugh, a little bit of lightheartedness. And next slide. So on a very different side of things, our Simplify the Holidays program addresses more of that consumption piece that I mentioned. And we talk about Simplify the Holidays because a lot of holidays are these kind of peak consumer or peak materialism events. And we're hosting this the week of 4th of July, partly for that reason. So some of you may have heard that the 5th of July is known as the dirtiest beach day of the year. That's primarily because of the celebrations on the 4th of July. And the Simplify the Holidays program was created to try to address those. Our website has quite a few gift guides and tips and tricks and stats to make your holidays more wildlife friendly. And with that, I will pass it over to Kaya.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kaya Hazard. I'm the Oregon Field Manager for the Surfrider Foundation. So in my role, I am one of two staffers in Oregon, the only one working in the field with our volunteer-led chapters. So in Oregon, we have 5 chapters, and they're, like I said, totally run by volunteers. We work on a grassroots model. So volunteers are able to identify what it is within Surfrider's mission that they want to be working on and carry out that work. So I work in a supportive role to them. I connect them to each other, and I also connect them to our team at HQ. Next slide. So while Surfrider is a recreation-focused nonprofit, the same things that we want for our beaches, we want healthy beaches to recreate on. Those are also qualities that are going to make for healthy habitats. And bird watching is one of those things we want to do on our beaches that fits under that recreation umbrella. So Surfrider works across these 5 initiative areas. We kind of have our hand in a little bit of everything, but our mission is the protection and enjoyment of the world's ocean, waves, and beaches for all people through a powerful activist network. So we work on clean water issues, beach access issues. We make sure that special places in our ocean and on our coastline are protected. But the 2 initiative areas that kind of intersect with the Western Snowy Plover are our plastic pollution initiative and our coast and climate initiative. So that is what I'm going to touch on tonight. Next slide. So like I said, Surfrider, it works on a grassroots model, so we're able to scale our work to the super local level, and we're also a national nonprofit, so we're able to scale up to the statewide and national levels as well. So I'm going to start locally. We kind of call beach cleanups the gateway drug at Surfrider. So Surfrider chapters are hosting beach cleanups year round. We have a few days that are the big ones, Earth Day, July 5th, the dirtiest beach day of the year, is a big one. So we'll be hosting 5 cleanups here in Oregon on this Saturday to clean up after the festivities. Of course, we uh, would like to see plastic fireworks phased out, but we know that is still a ways off. So what we're doing is going out there and cleaning up the firework waste before it turns into marine debris, enters the ocean. So if you scan that QR code, it will take you to a list of all of our beach cleanups that we're doing this weekend. And if you just type in your location, it will show you the beach cleanups near you if you're in Oregon, and also if you're elsewhere. This is a list of all of our cleanups nationally. So another important piece of what we're doing at these cleanups is collecting data on what it is that we're seeing on our beaches. So this data is then logged into our database, and it's used to inform our policy efforts in the future. So this graphic is our top 10 items collected at beach cleanups in 2024. So cigarette butts was number 1, but you can also see in here there's foam fragments, there's plastic fragments. So we can look at this data and decide if we want to focus on, okay, we need to look at the foam issue, we need to look at the cigarette butt issue. So that kind of segues into the next slide, which is addressing plastic pollution at the statewide level. So Surfrider specializes in working on direct action campaigns and kind of in that advocacy space. So the other staffer in Oregon is our policy manager. That's him in the photo, Charlie Plyben, along with some other members of the Plastic Free Coalition that we're a part of, and Senator Salmon. So we're working in the Capitol to pass these progressive plastic policies. I just wanted to touch on a couple of recent wins. I mean, we've worked on things going way back. We've worked in tons of cities across Oregon on local plastic bag bans. We worked on the original statewide bag ban in 2019, the Ditch the Straw campaign in Portland. And in 2023, if you remember from the last slide, like foam fragments were one of those number 1 or top 10 items found at beach cleanups. So using that data, we were able to work on the foam and plastic-free foodware bill in 2023. We also worked on cleaning up the Oregon Health Code to allow for reusable containers in grocery stores. And then this year, we were able to pass the Beyond the Bag ban, which is cleaning up a loophole from the original bag ban that allowed those thicker plastic bags. So those will now be banned going forward. So you can kind of see the connection there between our programmatic work and our beach cleanups and how that connects to policy and advocacy in that space. Next slide. So scaling up, we also have our ocean-friendly restaurants and hotels program that we work on all across the US. This is a map of all of our ocean-friendly restaurants. And this is a program that restaurants and hotels can enroll in if they meet a pretty rigorous criteria. And essentially, the goal of these programs are to eliminate single-use plastic in these industries. We provide a framework to help restaurants and hotels make more sustainable choices, not just related to plastic either, but also like related to where they're sourcing their fish from, for example, or like dark sky requirements. And so we're able to hold up this network of restaurants and hotels that are successful with eliminating single-use plastics and moving to reuse, and use that to influence plastic reduction legislation, building on that last slide. And lastly, just to make reuse and plastic-free mainstream. So across the program nationally, we have 600 ocean-friendly restaurants, and those restaurants serve over 41 million single-use plastic-free meals per year. So it's making a really huge impact kind of upstream where we're not seeing those plastic issues on the beach as much. Next slide. So while Surfrider is working to protect our beaches from many threats, as I said, we work across those 5 initiative areas. So we're working on water pollution and marine debris and coastal development. When we are defending beaches from these threats, it also means defending plovers and their habitats from these threats. So kind of going into that Coast and Climate Initiative area, we've seen a rise of shoreline armoring, which threatens to destroy that wide sandy beaches that humans love and that plovers need to nest on. So to that end, Surfrider and Oregon Shores have partnered to launch the Oregon Beaches Forever campaign to ensure that our beaches remain sandy and walkable for future generations of humans and plovers alike. So you can see in these 2 photos, one, there's tons of beach space to recreate on and for plovers to nest on. And in the other photo, the waves are coming right up to the riprap or those big rocks that are in front of the houses there, which makes that beach totally impassable. We're not able to recreate on it, and there would be nowhere for a bird to nest. So I will turn it over to Oregon Shores and let Mandy dig a bit more into that. Thanks.
Thanks, Kaya. As I mentioned, I'm Mandy. I'm the Coastal Conservation Manager for Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition.
And it's nice to see you all tonight. I'm Sam Derenbacher. I am the new Community Science and Engagement Manager for Oregon Shores.
All right, so at Oregon Shores, our vision is a healthy and resilient Oregon coast where all people and nature, including our western snowy plovers, thrive together. We do this through kind of 2 main avenues. We have our policy advocacy avenue, and then we have our education and outreach. Sam will talk about one super fun aspect of our education and outreach program, but I also wanted to give a shout out to our Coast Watch program, where people can adopt a mile of the coast to monitor, steward, and collect citizen science data about our beaches. And plover nests are something our coast watchers are actively monitoring for during nesting season and are trained in proper plover etiquette, and they know where and how to report a plover nest to. And then regarding our policy advocacy realm and building off of Kaya's work, we want to touch on the Oregon Beaches Forever campaign, which is one of many campaigns that Oregon Shores is actively engaged in. As Kaya mentioned, Oregon Beaches Forever campaign is a multi-year collaboration between the Surfrider Foundation of Oregon and Oregon Shores, with the big overarching goal of protect public beaches and promote climate-ready coasts. So here in Oregon, our beaches are public by law, but as Kai demonstrated with those 2 pictures, that they're under growing threat from a coastal squeeze when that sea level comes and meets development, whether it's houses that have been built too close to the shore or riprap hard armoring, like in Kai's picture and the picture you see here. So when that sea level comes up and meets that development, it squeezes out our public beach, it squeezes out our plover nesting habitat, an area to walk, and it's getting severe. We're seeing beaches shrink and even disappear completely in some places, leaving no room for the public or for the plovers. So at Oregon Beaches Forever, our campaign is kind of the roadmap for us to engage with this issue and to, work for a better outcome. So together, we're working to advocate for smarter, climate-ready coastal policy planning and promote nature-based solutions that preserve Oregon's beaches while still protecting the communities, and push back against harmful shoreline development, like building too close to the shore or hard armoring and riprap, and also improve the rules that govern how Oregon beaches are managed and accessed. We believe that Oregon beaches should be protected for the people and also for the plovers. So next you'll hear about some work that Sam's involved in.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mandy. We just want to take a quick moment to spotlight one of our education outreach programs that we believe is kind of a really neat way that we've partnered with others to link things like marine debris cleanups and the damage that marine debris can do with endangered and threatened species with the education and outreach so that folks kind of can get invested in different ways into the program. So that example that we have for you today started about 3 years ago in partnership with a wonderful artist that lives down in Bandon, Elizabeth Roberts. Elizabeth uses marine debris that's picked up on our Oregon beaches to create sculptures and artwork to educate the public, but also as her passion to blend art with science. So the Art and Ecology Workshop is a series that's built up where it's kind of done in 3 stages. The first stage is throughout the winter after king tides. We enter into snowy plover management areas. So this is the season when the snowy plovers aren't nesting. So it's a good time for us to kind of be in those areas to get as much of the debris out as possible. And we partner with folks like the U.S. Forest Service, Birds Alliance of Oregon, Heart of Cardam, Solve, Boy Scouts of America, Oregon State Parks, and so many other folks to get to areas that are often difficult to reach for regular beach cleanups. So they might be areas like down in the Oregon dunes where access is really, vehicles are kind of needed to get to the site to even clean up the mass amounts of debris that might be deposited there. So this past year in 2024, 2025 winter, there were 11 separate events with over 86 volunteers that attended and helped out. And we were able to haul boatloads, literally boatloads of debris off of the beaches. And then from that point on, when you take marine debris that's been collected on beaches and you want to turn it into artwork, there is a process of sorting and cleaning that debris. So there were hours that were spent then sorting and cleaning this debris so that it could become usable in the artwork. Next slide. And after the debris is sorted and cleaned, this is where we can start working with the students in every year we choose approximately 3 schools throughout the entire coastline of Oregon. So this past year it was mostly the north coast of Oregon schools that were joining us, but the prior year it was the Central Coast schools, and then the year before it was the South Coast schools. So this year we chose 3 schools in the north coast of Oregon and built in programming with the educators there, with the teachers there, that pulls together the connection of king tides, marine debris, critical species with a highlight on the western snowy plover, and then what students can do or how they can brainstorm ways to keep marine debris off of our beaches so that it doesn't become a perpetual problem that we see it as today. So the programming is really neat. Every year is kind of different style. We have different stations that students work through, each with kind of a highlight of one of those aspects of science and art. So the photos here you can see on the left-hand side, the students were, after their art component, they talked a lot about the marine debris and where it came from while they were creating the art, and then sat down and brainstormed ways to keep the marine debris from being marine debris. So keeping the pollution off the beaches and out of our oceans. Then in the middle photo there, you'll see a student that's playing a game where we actively designed a way to show tides coming in, depositing marine debris, and then having a team of, quote, volunteers going and cleaning up that debris that was on the grass that was spread out from those tides. And during that component, we brought in the western snowy plover example for them, where while we're out doing beach cleanups, especially if it's in the summer season where a lot of people want to be active on our Oregon coast, that there is critical species that are out there that we need to keep an eye out for and be careful that, we don't want to disturb them in ways that could harm them or scare them while we're doing a good deed like a beach cleanup. And then the last photo on the edge, that would be the right-hand side, is showing students that participated in building a Western snowy plover story. So this was an opportunity for the students to then take what they learned at the other two stations and about king tides, Western snowy plovers, and marine debris, and build a story around that with a local Western snowy plover that they got to name and talk about. Next slide. And then a really, really neat component of this, again, is that actual artwork that we get to build with Elizabeth Roberts. So you'll see this is on the right-hand side, that oyster catcher image there is actually the artwork that the students created. And this is created in panels. So every class gets to build one panel, and then the panels are photographed and then virtually stitched together to create one overall image. And this image is a mural that we gift to the schools in like a banner form. So the schools can display the artwork that their students participated in and have that year-round reminder of the neat work that the students got to do. It's also an opportunity where we can partner with other folks that do things like a release of the photo for us. So this year, Heart of Cardam did a big party for marine debris, utilizing marine debris in fashion, and they actually revealed the mural at that event so that students could come in person and meet other cool folks that are doing cool things with marine debris and see their artwork on the wall. And then we also turn them into postcards so folks like you can help keep this program going for the future generations. So you're welcome to go on our website and purchase any of the years. We actually have all 3 years up as designs that are available in like a card format. And then all those funds go to supporting this program in the future. And I think that's my last slide. So I will turn it over to Laurel.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Laurel Hillman. I'm the Ocean Shore Resource Coordinator for Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, also known as Oregon State Parks. And so I'm glad to join some of our partners here to talk about our role in Western snowy plovers on the Oregon coast as one of the key managers of Oregon's beaches. Next slide. So Western snowy plovers are subject to a variety of threats. Like the key threats are part of this trifecta of threats that are interactive, including namely habitat loss, largely from introduction of non-native species such as European beach grass, predators exacerbated by human food, and some of them are native and some of them are non-native, but some of their populations have increased due to human interactions with the predators and their food sources, and then also recreation related disturbance on Oregon's beaches. So given those threats, we look at a number of things as part of our management of Oregon's beaches through our habitat conservation plan. Knowing what those threats are, we use monitoring in collaboration with some of our partners from Portland State University and lots of great volunteers up and down the coast that do a lot of work to help us with our monitoring to find out where the plovers are. We also have seasonal restrictions at certain designated beaches along the coast, which are listed on this map here. And if you're interested in digging into all the details, you can find all this information on our website at oregon.gov/plovers. I'll talk a little bit more about the seasonal beach restrictions on my next slide, but we also work on things like predator management, which includes reducing that food source for predators by controlling trash in campgrounds, educating the public about appropriate use and disposal of trash, and then working with our partners on things like the beach cleanups that have been mentioned before. And we also work on habitat restoration work in some of these sites, and I'll talk a little bit more about that on one of my next slides. Next slide. So one of the things that you can do year-round, and we'll talk about those first, and then there are some rules that apply to some of those designated sites on the coast, which were on the map earlier, but some of the beach etiquette that you can do year-round, and especially during plover season when you're visiting the Oregon coast, are listed on this slide. One thing that you might not think about is sort of leaving that beach, the natural marine debris, not the plastic human-caused debris, but seaweed, kelp, things that are in the rack line naturally, leaving that there because it's really important for the things that plovers eat. And it also provides potential camouflage for their nests. So that's true for both kelp and driftwood and other things that are naturally deposited in the rack line along the Oregon coast. Things like if you bring anything in, you can pack it out. It's really important not to leave, especially food waste on the beaches, because the smell of food waste can attract predators such as crows and ravens. Walking and riding, either if you're walking as a pedestrian or on a bike or e-bike or on a horse, doing that on the wet sand can be especially helpful during plover season, regardless of whether it's a designated beach, because plovers are showing up along the whole coast. Now we have plovers nesting in every coastal county for the past couple years, which is pretty exciting. But it also means, responsibly sharing the beaches is more important in more places. If you're in an area that is a non-designated site, but you do see some ropes that are protecting individual nests, we ask you to keep your dogs on a leash and keep them away from those roped areas. And never let dogs chase birds, because they expend a lot of energy on running away, and they're definitely not having fun. Apparently I have pack it in, pack it out twice, because it's especially important. So, so those are our sort of beach etiquette things that you can do year round, and especially during plover season. But on those designated beaches, which you can find on the website, and you will see them marked by signage on site, are the seasonal beach restrictions, which include no dogs, whether they're on the wet sand or the dry sand, on leash or not, just no dogs in those designated beaches. No vehicles, no bikes. That also includes e-bikes, whether they're on the wet or the dry sand. No beach fires, and no kites or kite-like things like drones. And then we ask other people that are recreating on those beaches to do so on the wet sand, so below that rack line, so that it gives space to plovers during nesting season. And these restrictions are only in place on those specially designated sites during nesting season, which is March 15th through September 15th. Next slide. Some of the habitat restoration work that we're doing has some opportunities for volunteerism in future years, and has in the past been occurring. We have some of our designated sites on the North Coast, including Sitka's Edge State Natural Area and Hallam Bay State Park. We've worked to remove some of the invasive species out of those areas, and maintaining those areas generally free of or minimally present plants, because plovers like wide open sandy beach. So some plants are okay, just not too many plants, and preferably not native, not invasive plants. So we're trying to do native plantings in these areas, and maintaining them generally non-native plant free. And then also last year, for the first time on some of our North Coast sites, we spread some oyster shell, because plovers like having that sort of diversity in the landscape for their camouflage on the beach. So in the future, there might be future opportunities for more oyster scattering events, as well as some hand pulling of the baby non-native beach grass. So look forward to those opportunities. I think that's my last slide.
Sweet. Thanks, Laurel, so much. And thanks to OPRD for all they do for our coasts and our people and our plovers. Yeah, this is our last slide, where you find all of our contact information and calls to action. I want to give a special shout out to our snowy plover habitat cleanup on July 5th, one of the many cleanups that Surfrider is hosting. But at this one specifically, it's a historic snowy plover nesting site, and we'll have refreshments and treats after. So yeah, I hope you'll join us, or whatever beach cleanup is closest to you, on the dirtiest beach day of the year, this Saturday. All right, and I think we'll open it up for questions.
Yeah, and I did see someone had a hand raised, but unfortunately I cannot unmute you. So if you do have a question, the best way to get it to us is, yeah, drop it in the chat or put it in the Q&A. And there was one question already for Kaya. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but someone was asking where that photo was of the armoring on the coast, or maybe Mandy, you had a photo of that too.
Yeah, the photo that was on my slide, that is from Glen Eden Beach, which is a heavily armored stretch of beach in Oregon.
Yeah, last time I was at Glen Eden Beach, there was a sign that said no beach access due to erosion control, just like highlighting that now it's dangerous to walk down that stretch with the waves coming up.
Sweet. And then Anna, I see your comment that your U.S. Fish or U.S. Forest Service snowy plover doesn't. Yeah. And dealing with a lot of predation of nests by crows, trying hard to educate beach visitors about staying out of dry sands and keeping dogs away from critical nesting areas. We have fencing set up around as many areas as possible, but signs blow away or get knocked down. The trash I collect, I turn into washed ashore. Very cool, but I'm the only volunteer currently and can only monitor once a week. Absolutely, yeah. That's a big reason why I think we have so many groups hosting beach cleanups, is also to find kind of community around it and have more people. Here's a question. I don't know, Laurel, you might know the answer. What are the population trends for snowy plover in Oregon?
Well, it is definitely an upward trend, which is great. So if you look at the data from the 90s through today, it varies from year to year, but for the last 5 years or so, it's been anywhere between high 300s to 500 birds. So definitely they have good years and bad years, but overall the population seems generally stable. Fingers crossed. It's not going to go the opposite direction.
And Lori, yeah, I see that you raised your hand. I unfortunately can't unmute you, so if you can just type your question in, I can ask it to the crowd. And while we're waiting for other questions, I actually had a question for the art ecology workshops. What happens with the panel, the actual art panels? Because if I heard you right, you take a photo of it and make it into the cards and make it into the banner for the school. But yeah, just curious where that goes.
Yeah, great question. So all of the marine debris that's used in that game, because of the time it takes to clean it, and sort it out by color, which is how the artist can then, arrange it to actually make the photo. Every panel that's made, none of the material is actually glued down or attached in any way. So every class reuses the same materials throughout the entire like time building those panels. And then the artists, both at Wash Ashore and our artists reuse that plastic in additional structures, whether it's a sculpture for a Wash Ashore exhibit or the Oregon oh my gosh, the aquarium. Mandy, what's the name of the aquarium in Newport? I just blanked on the name of them.
The Oregon Coast Aquarium, I
The
think.
Oregon, thank you. I just blanked on the words. The Oregon Coast Aquarium currently has a really neat, beautiful exhibit, and some of the plastics from previous years, from the 2 previous years, were used in some of those exhibits too. So it all gets reused in more art, which is pretty neat.
That's so cool. Yeah, I was gonna be like, do you throw it away? But that's such a better answer. That's so cool.
Yeah, yeah.
I had another question while we're waiting for questions. This is for, wait, if I can remember my question. Oh, for Laurel. For the shell scattering, also about where things come from and where they go. Where do you get the oyster shells for shell scattering?
Well, we've only done it this one year, this past year. Other partners have done it in previous years, so I can't speak to where they got it. But we had oyster shell not donated to one of our partners to Oregon Bird Alliance by a local shellfish grower in Yaquina Bay. And then they were going to be working with potentially some in Tillamook Bay or in the general area around there. So it was a donation to one of our partners, and then we spread it around with volunteers.
Very cool. And
It
is
was
that
it was
is
pretty
that like
fun. I could say she spread seashells by the seashore, and actually having spread the seashells, it was quite fun. So I would definitely look for one of those opportunities in the future if you're interested in helping with some habitat restoration work. It was pretty fun.
And is that an annual donation? They're gonna donate again.
I think that that might be in the works for at least one more round of donations, but
Great.
that's not, I'm not handling that, so I'm not sure.
Cool. Well, we did have a question from Lori come in. So, Lori says, I walk the beaches between Seal Rock and Depot Bay on a regular basis, and dogs are a big issue. So, unleashed dogs, dog poop, and picnicking on dry sand are everywhere unless it's too windy or rainy. And the question is kind of what to do. And I see Anna just replied, I show photos of the plovers and explain their situation, which I think is a great answer. But if anyone else wants to chime in on that.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. I would just say, by law, the beaches are for all of us. And so, feel empowered by that. Maybe, yeah, do what was suggested in the comments, just friendly approach them if you feel comfortable, if it feels safe. If not, unfortunately, I don't think there's no puppy patrol you can call to, have people wrangle up their dogs. And this is coming from someone who loves taking her dog to the beach. Yeah, it's tricky because confrontation is tricky and we care about the plovers and we want them to have a safe habitat. Yeah, it's a tough one, but I would encourage you to speak up if it's safe and if you feel like it.
I would just add to that. I think that oftentimes people are not intending to do bad, they just don't know. So, explaining, like Anna said, explaining why, like, that plovers nest up in the dry sand and that they get spooked when people are too close to them. Um, Having the why behind it can really help people connect to, like, their own behavior change and why it's important.
Yeah, and to kind of go off of that too, I think a lot of people do really love wildlife and love birds, and they might be at the beach to hang out with their dog, but might be excited about the possibility of seeing like wildlife as well. And I'm sure if you're doing that very frequently and it's a frequent issue, that it can be frustrating to kind of have to face day after day. But I imagine that there are quite a few people who would respond well and um, especially be excited about, if you said like there are baby plovers around here, that might, get them in the door a little bit. I'll also just point out we have a bunch of other calls to action on this slide. So each of our organizations, as we mentioned, are working on just a huge array of different projects. And if you have any questions about any specific work we're doing, all of our contact information is here. So feel free to reach out. And yeah, if you have any more questions, drop them in the chat now, but we just really appreciate everyone coming.
Yeah, on a final note, I want to add that all of our organizations, I'm really happy with, the plover work we do, but we're not the only ones who do plover work. So I wanted to give a shout out to Bird Alliance of Oregon, who couldn't be here with us today, and ODFW. I'm sure you guys do great plover work, and I'd love to hear more about it. So yeah, just thanks for everyone who works on Oregon plovers everywhere, because it's not just us. And I guess with that, if there are no more questions, we should call it a night. So thanks everyone for coming and learning about plovers, and we hope to see you at a July 5th cleanup.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.